Hey everyone, my name is Neil Oler. This is my presentation for Utah.js entitled Timely Feedback. I originally gave this at the event venue, but due to a technical flub, we weren't able to actually capture the recording, and so the organizers graciously allowed me to do this at home. I present to you the home version of Timely Feedback. Patrick Lencioni, author of the book The Advantage, lists two requirements for success, right? He says that we need the smarts, or I would call the hard skills, and then we need the health, meaning organizational health, or what I will term relationship health. Obviously, the smarts we know as strategy, marketing, finance, technology, and we clearly know those are important because we put them on our resume. And those are the things that we try to get job interviews with, and we discuss on the awesome Utah.js Slack, right? We discuss those things a lot in our careers. Those things are discussed in many career fields. And yet, what I found interesting about these lists, or this list, is that we also have the health side of things, right? Patrick Lencioni is referring to organizational health, but I'd like to also bring it down to the kind of the micro scale and say these are important for kind of interpersonal relationships, right? You kind of want minimal politics between people. You want minimal confusion. You want high morale in relationships, right? High productivity, low turnover. Those may not quite apply to the same, one-on-one relationships, but those kind of feelings that exist, right? That you're not going through and churning and burning through relationships, and that you are appreciating that, man, when I talk to this person, I really I get a lot of motivation, and it's an uplifting thing, right? We all know intuitively as human beings that we need both of these things on the list. And yet, I spent 4 years at a university getting a degree in electrical engineering. We talked about a lot of stuff, right? Math, quantum physics, how lasers work. It was really cool. And yet, and I double checked with a college friend of mine because I wanted to make sure I wasn't remembering this incorrectly. As we thought about how often we got training on soft skills, anything to do with relationships, we recalled one 40-minute lecture junior year one time, right? And yet, think about all the relationships that we have had in our lives. It is curious that professionally we see so much attention put on smarts, and yet we know that we need the healthy relationship side of things in order to truly reach maximum potential. Patrick Lencioni goes on to say, the vast majority of organizations today have more than enough intelligence, expertise, and knowledge to be successful. What they lack is organizational health. I believe this very much. I believe that, perhaps anecdotally to you, but see if your experience maybe coincides a bit with mine, I have very rarely ever seen projects and ultimately companies fail because we just, as the collective might of human cognitive ability, we were just unable to flip the bits back and forth in the right way to make things happen. It happens, of course, but much more frequently, in my experience at least, I have seen organizational health be the downfall of products, projects, and organizations. So, I want to talk about timely feedback and why I think it's so important to organizations, right? I like the sign, and it helped me kind of think through how I would define timely feedback, right? I wanted to say that timely feedback is communication that is sufficiently detailed and given quickly enough to prevent future problems, right? It's a course correction so that Sure, you don't fly into the mountain, but you also fly far enough away from the mountain that the plane flight is very leisurely, right? Imagine, if you will, that this sign was was lacking detail, right? That it said somewhere between the next 1 to 20 miles on the road, there might be some problems, maybe kind of, right? That would obviously be not detailed enough to really understand how you're supposed to act on it, right? It's very clear. Danger, wrong way, turn back. You don't necessarily know exactly where the danger is, but you know they're not they're not messing around, right? They're not kidding about this. This is important stuff. And imagine if this were placed, danger, wrong way, turn back, but it was placed 1 mile after the sinkhole ate the road. Imagine if it was placed 1 mile after the bridge was out, right? Obviously, that would be detailed, but not given in enough time to really act on it before bad things happened. So, I want to talk about 4 ways to give and improve on giving timely feedback. Don't assume you know. The problem is not the person. Communication as a second language, and make relationship deposits often. So the first one here. This is a great XKCD comic. I really like this. Right, just that you assumed and I assumed, and we can just assume ad nauseum. The moral is assumption is kind of damaging, right? But more to the point, I think that even well-meaning, kind-hearted, decently empathetic people like you and me struggle to give feedback in time because we worry about damaging relationships. We worry that either the person that we feel we need to communicate with is going to take things personally, will damage that relationship, or even if that's not the first, kind of first line concern, we worry that we'll get a reputation for being someone who, ooh, that person's kind of obnoxious, kind of rude, kind of mean, and so we shy away from these things. And yet, I submit to you that one of the big reasons why we shy away is because we assume we know what is motivating a behavior. Say, for example, your teammate is late to come into work, and you really need that teammate to come in at a previously arranged and discussed time, and you're going, hey, I need to be able to sync up with you to talk about pull requests before we have stand up or whatever it is, right? And you instantly think, well, this person is late. I seem to remember this person saying something about struggles, relationship struggles with a significant other, or interpersonal strife with a family member. The landlord is being obnoxious, and then you start to think, oh my goodness, I don't know how to solve those problems, and I either have to be somebody who hops in and tries to solve all that. I need to be a counselor. I need to be, this is going to be a lot of work. And yet, you have assumed that you know exactly why someone is later than the prearranged time. But do you know? You can't know a motivation until it's been shared with you. Too often, because of our self-centric kind of world viewpoint, we assume we understand the motivation because of an observed behavior. So the action here is simply, instead of worrying about all that, you can simply say, hey, I've noticed you have been a bit later than we talked about. What's up? Can you tell me more about what's going on, or do we need to rearrange our expectations here? It's a much simpler conversation that does not presuppose any malice or anything behind it other than I'm just seeing something. I want to talk about what I'm seeing. Second thing, the problem is not the person. This is a great picture to me, because those 3 people in the lower right-hand corner of the picture, right? They are all trying to do that classic picture of holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And each one of them, from our perspective looking at it looks ridiculous, right? It looks silly. But each one of them are hoping that for the exact photographer who is, hopefully lining up with their perspective, they are hoping that it comes out to look like it makes sense, right? They're hoping to capture a fun picture of holding up this, classic Italian landmark. We see the world through our own lens. And just because of the way our minds are wired, we tend to be very self-centered, right? We are the main characters in our story. I am the main character in my story. And so when I see someone else being late to work, right, doing a behavior that I think, I find that off-putting, obnoxious, rude, inconsiderate, unempathetic, I tend to think, well, obviously that person is being malicious or lazy or inconsiderate because I see how much it affects me and I would never. And yet, again, we are subjective people assuming we own objective points of view, right? I mean, think about that for a second. Of course, the things you are doing and the way you interpret other people's actions are correct to your mind. Because if you knew it was incorrect to the point where you're going, this is ridiculous, makes no sense, and I don't see a point of repeating it, you probably wouldn't repeat it as often, right? But how can we determine motivation from observed behavior unless the motivations have been shared with us? Simon Sinek, a author and excellent speaker, I really enjoy a lot of his stuff. You should check him out. He invites us to make a list of 20 reasons why someone would be behaving the way we are observing. This is not a list to be, sharing with the person, right? This is a personal exercise. But he goes on to say, look, write down, laziness, right? Okay. Reason number one, this person may be, consistently late to work, laziness. But then reason two, right? He talks about, what about COVID distress? Past 2 years have been very hard. And oftentimes they're very hard in private and really personal, aggravating ways. Those things weigh on us psychologically differently from person to person. Struggles with significant other, right? If you are having a rough time in a relationship, whether it be significant other, or like I mentioned, family member, a neighbor, right? These are all things that, at least when it comes to doing our jobs, they don't have anything to do with pull requests for React components, but they do weigh on your mind. And they take up some cycles, and those cycles can get diverted, and then we just observe the diversion and go, oh, that person must be lazy, right? Changes in personal medication. Speaking personally and getting a bit vulnerable here, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. I've been taking medication for a few months for it. I really enjoy what the medication does for me, but it's been a learning curve. There's been some ups and downs about. Ask me sometime about taking that and then taking the regular amount of caffeine that I usually took in the morning. That was not a fun time. Leads to all sorts of weird side effects. If you had seen me that day and demanded that day was the day I was on point, oh man, you would have seen a very suboptimal Neil. But there's a reason for it, right? Changes in mental health regimen, right? Meditation, where maybe because of other changes now you can't meditate as much, other things like that. New routine. I've been getting up at 6:30 in the morning to take kids to school this year. It's killing me. I haven't gotten up at 6:30 in the morning to do anything consistently for like 15 years. This is rough stuff. I'm probably not looking the most on the point. At least I'm catching up now, maybe. But the first week, oh, good grief, it was abysmal, right? Changes in religious affiliation. I am not advocating for or against any religion or having a religion or anything like that. I'm simply saying, in my experience, these are things that weigh on people, and that I have foolishly, erroneously, right, attributed, mood swings and frustrations observed, right, as, oh, that person's just got a bad attitude. But then when occasionally I pull my head out of the sand, we'll say, uh, and I actually check in with the person and realize, oh, you made a big change in like your religious affiliation. Yeah, that that's got some weight to it. That's got stresses, that changes relationship dynamics and stuff that's tricky to navigate. Of course that's going to weigh on you, right? There's any number of other factors that could weigh on people. Again, the goal here is not to, with precision, pinpoint the idea, but it is to at least recognize the humanity of the other person, and then to say, maybe they're being lazy, but that is one, at least, from what Simon Sinek recommends, 1/20th of the chance of what it could be. And it could be a whole host of other things that deserves our consideration, our kindness, right? So that we recognize, like is said here, and this is from Simon Sinek's presentation on this idea, that the problem we are seeing is not the person, right? So, like this picture shows, right? I like this picture because it shows the iceberg kind of idea, right? That we're observing the tip of the iceberg and thinking we know exactly what the entire iceberg looks like. Make a list of 20 things. Communication as a second language, right? So I got the opportunity to learn how to speak Finnish. It was very interesting to see that there were times when even learning how to speak Finnish, I would understand the word because, because you learn to speak things, you memorize vocab words, but then the way they were used together was very confusing. For example, I have up here pig clean. A way to say really cool in Finnish is sika siisti, which means pig clean. What? That's a very weird way to say it, right? If you come in there with your dictionary and look it up and go pig clean, I'm really confused, right? Now, go one step farther and realize there are places on the planet where the word pig, for example, is offensive. That is a curse word, a bad word, right? That person could even be offended when looking that up in the dictionary, right? This is an example of a blurry word, something that we can appreciate more in the context of someone learning English or Finnish, right, as a second language. People are pretty patient with me, all in all. But I find that I can be very impatient with people who I assume, well, we seem to speak the same, same first language pretty well, but man, we're just not communicating. This idea of blurry words, right? Something that we assume everyone will know our interpretation thereof, right? You're not very driven in your work. This project is sloppy, right? I'll be there around 5 p.m. Is that before or after 5 p.m.? Who knows, right? This movie is pretty bad. That's a silly way to talk. This project idea sucks. Well, but what are you really trying to get at, right? One of the reasons why our communication fails often is the use of blurry words. This is my quick attempt at trying to find ways to give more detail so that you get your point across, but if anything, your communication is improved so people really know what's on your mind. I don't see you as active in the same projects that your peers are involved in. This project is missing some of the details we talked about when we planned it. I will be there at 4:55 p.m. or 5:05 p.m., whatever, but be specific, right? Details. I don't find the acting in this movie to be something that moves me. Still kind of a blurry definition, but at least people know a bit more about where you're coming from. I don't agree with what you just said, or instead of this project sucks, say, I'm concerned that this project is going to be too hard to, reach deadlines around, etc., right? When we approach communicating, right? Giving feedback as someone who has to approach learning a language that is not their, their mother tongue, their first language. It helped me to start to realize, not just grammatically, right? I learned a lot about English by learning Finnish, but even with definitions and things like that, to think about, well, I assume everyone knows what I mean when I use this word, and I use it because I'm trying to communicate quickly. But that's not the point of communication. Communication is not just to like spit out as much, word salad as you can and hope people understand the context, but it's to really make sure that your thoughts and your emotions are communicated in a way that, again, people have detail and have enough time to be able to change interactions. The fourth thing, make relationship deposits often. It is very hard as human beings to separate the message from the messenger. Uh, as I thought about this point, a funny, I mean, I'm laughing about it, right? A funny anecdote came to mind of a few years ago. I was at a friend's house. We were having a 4th of July party, right, at this friend's house. And I have 5 kids. I love these kids. They're amazing, awesome, love it to pieces. At that time, I think it was 5 kids under the age of like 10, right? So we started off with twins, so that's a bit of an adventure. They also just helped the younger kids trick or treat like alone this year, so it comes with perks, right? But at that time, trying to gather up all the kids at the end of this party felt like herding cats, right? It was just it was a circus. And my friend's brother, who happened to be there as well, made some comment about, well, like, I don't know why it matters, right? Like, you just have a bunch. What does it matter if you lose one? Just make another. You're clearly good at it, right? It was an obnoxious comment. I went home kind of, rolling my eyes and somewhat bugged about it, just going, ugh, what a jerk. Of course he'd say something like that, ugh, right? And yet, as I contemplated on it, as we often do about, bad communication moments, because they seem to stick in our mental wind grill, right, our wind filter a bit more, I realized that my friend who was hosting the party, he had made basically the same kind of comment, poking fun at me having maybe a lot, in his opinion, of kids. Sometimes, in my opinion, it's a lot of kids, right? Depends on if you're cleaning up and trying to organize after a party. But I realized my friend, even though he made basically the same kind of comment, I laughed it off. I didn't think much of it, right? It certainly did not stick out and bug and annoy and offend me like this comment from his brother. And I realized it's because my friend has made a point of generally having our interactions be uplifting, be positive, be things that are building me up, right? This leads me to the sharing of an analogy that my dad once gave me, and he gave it in passing, but good grief, this has been one of those things where you just hear and go, holy cow, that is a profound statement. He said that we need to make relationship, I want to make sure I get this right. Relationships are like bank accounts, and that we need to make deposits often and in big enough quantities, right? The amount deposited needs to be meaningful enough to really raise the balance over time. Because the withdrawals are oftentimes larger and less expected than we would like, right? It's fascinating to see that oftentimes when we are concerned about feedback, it's good to be, right, concerned about the relationship. I think that comes from a place of empathy. But if you're anything like me, occasionally those are also moments where I realize, oh, I'm scared to give this feedback because I don't know how this person's going to take it. And I'm realizing I haven't done anything during like the good times, or at least the, the less like stormy, tumultuous, rocky road kind of times. I haven't done anything to build up the relationship. I once had a boss that, because he would make frequent, he would invite me out to just go on walks around the block, right? And we'd chat about having kids, right? He was 15, 20 years older than me. He's still around. And, we'd chat about kids and, just the foibles of relationships, and just, we'd just kind of shoot the breeze, right? And then on occasion, he would ask me to go on a walk, and then kind of go, hey, so, you've kind of been late a little bit. What's up? This isn't the arrangement. We got to chat about this, right? I remember getting back from one of these chats where he had basically chastised me, and I remember thinking that it was hours later, as I was thinking on the day and thinking about the conversation, that I realized, oh, he was having a rather direct, like, hey, you kind of need to shape up here kind of conversation. But because he had been in the habit of building the relationship, because he had been in the habit of making frequent and meaningful deposits into our relationship, I didn't even realize that we were having a like boss to subordinate kind of conversation, because it didn't feel like that. It felt like, once again, my friend was observing behavior and not trying to assume he knew why, but just wanting to discuss it, be clear about it, and follow up so we could fix it, right? Okay, so the 4 ways to give and improve timely feedback. Don't assume you know. The problem is not the person. Communication can be treated as a second language to remove blurry words, and make relationship deposits often. My name is Neil Oler. Here's a picture of me. I'm super into Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of things, fantasy and things like that. I work at a place called Travel Pass Group. We are definitely hiring right now, and I would love to talk to you more. Here is a QR code. One last thing. I know this is maybe an interesting and somewhat out there topic for a tech conference. I believe that these are the things that are going to make our world better. It's a bit utopian. I understand how it sounds, but to change the world around you by improving the relationships you have is one of the most meaningful and actually like tangible, right? Like real, and you can do it and start today kind of things to make the world better. And if there's a relationship that came to your mind while you're watching this, while you're listening, please make some effort to make a deposit into that relationship today. I can't promise you instant success and all that stuff, but I can promise you from my own experience that when I try to think about how to do this more than less, I see benefits, and not just in the workplace gets happier, and I feel more empowered to really communicate, but ultimately I see people's lives improved, including my own. So again, Neil Oler, thank you much for watching and participating, and yeah, thank you very much.